Is too much intimacy bad for your health? When we think about intimacy, the first things that come to mind are warmth, affection, closeness, and the beautiful bond it builds between two people. We're told it's healthy. We're told it strengthens relationships. We're told it's one of the most natural and wonderful parts of life. But what if I told you that too much intimacy could actually harm you? That something we associate with love, pleasure, and emotional connection might, under certain circumstances, be working against your health? Sounds strange, right? But science has some surprising answers. Let's take a step back and think about what intimacy actually is. It's more than just physical closeness. It's emotional, psychological, and sometimes even spiritual connection. But here's the twist. Just like overeating, overexercising, or oversleeping, too much of something good can turn into a problem, and intimacy is no exception. For starters, let's talk about physical health. Believe it or not, too much intimacy, especially sexual activity, can put a strain on your body. Frequent physical contact releases hormones like oxytocin and dopamine, which make you feel good. But over time, constantly triggering these hormonal surges can cause fatigue, weakened immunity, and even hormonal imbalances in both men and women. Think of it like overusing a muscle. Eventually, it gets sore and needs recovery time. Your body's systems work the same way. And it's not just about the body, it's about the mind too. Overindulging in intimacy can sometimes blur personal boundaries, leading to emotional dependency. When one partner begins to rely heavily on constant closeness for validation or happiness, it can create anxiety, jealousy, and even feelings of loss of identity. Relationships thrive when there's a balance between togetherness and individuality. Too much intimacy can disrupt that balance. Now, here's a fact that might surprise you. Studies show that excessive intimacy, especially when combined with little rest or poor self-care, can actually lower libido over time. It's a paradox. Doing more can make you want it less. This is because your brain's pleasure centers adapt to frequent stimulation, meaning you need more to feel the same excitement. It's like how eating chocolate every day eventually makes it less special. Another area where too much intimacy can backfire is sleep quality. While occasional closeness can help you relax and sleep better, excessive nighttime intimacy, especially at the expense of consistent sleep, can mess with your circadian rhythm. And we all know poor sleep is linked to a whole host of health problems, from weakened immunity to mood disorders. There's also the immune system factor. Physical intimacy can expose you to your partner's bacteria and viruses. In moderation, this can actually boost immunity by helping your body adapt. But in excess, especially if one partner is sick or stressed, it can increase the risk of catching infections. On the emotional side, too much intimacy can sometimes create what psychologists call enmeshment, when two people become so intertwined that they lose their sense of independence. While this might feel romantic at first, it can actually make conflicts more intense and recovery from disagreements much harder. In extreme cases, it can even lead to emotional burnout, where you feel drained instead of energized by your partner's presence. But before you start thinking intimacy is dangerous, let's be clear. Intimacy is good for you in the right amounts. The problem isn't closeness, it's imbalance. The healthiest relationships are those where partners can be close, yet still maintain their own lives, hobbies, and identities. It's about finding that sweet spot where connection fuels you instead of draining you. So, what's the takeaway? Intimacy is like water. You need it to survive, but too much at once can overwhelm you. The key is to listen to your body, your emotions, and your relationship dynamics. Make space for rest, individuality, and non-romantic bonding too. Because in the end, the healthiest intimacy is the kind that leaves you feeling fulfilled, not exhausted. When we think about intimacy, the first things that come to mind are warmth, affection, closeness, and the beautiful bond it builds between two people. We're told it's healthy. We're told it strengthens relationships. We're told it's one of the most natural and wonderful parts of life. But what if I told you that too much intimacy could actually harm you? That something we associate with love, pleasure, and emotional connection might, under certain circumstances, be working against your health? It may sound strange, but science has some surprising answers. Let's take a moment to understand what intimacy truly is. It's more than just physical closeness. It's emotional, psychological, and sometimes even spiritual connection. But here's the twist. Just like overeating, overexercising, or oversleeping, too much of something good can turn into a problem. And intimacy is no exception. One of the first areas to consider is physical health. Believe it or not, too much intimacy, especially sexual activity, can put a strain on your body. Frequent physical contact releases hormones like oxytocin and dopamine, which make you feel good. But over time, constantly triggering these hormonal surges can cause fatigue, weaken your immunity, and even lead to hormonal imbalances in both men and women. Think of it like overusing a muscle. Eventually, it gets sore and needs recovery time. Your body's systems operate in much the same way. For example, when oxytocin levels remain consistently high due to excessive intimacy, it can actually blunt your stress response system. This might sound good at first, less stress, but in reality, your body needs a balanced hormonal rhythm. Without it, you can experience mood swings, irritability, and even trouble concentrating. Over time, these effects can impact not just your health, but your overall energy and motivation. And it's not just your body, it's your mind too. Overindulging in intimacy can sometimes blur personal boundaries, leading to emotional dependency. When one partner begins to rely heavily on constant closeness for validation or happiness, it can create anxiety, jealousy, and even feelings of loss of identity. Relationships thrive when there's a balance between togetherness and individuality. Too much intimacy can disrupt that balance, making it harder for both partners to grow as individuals. Interestingly, research has shown that excessive intimacy, especially without enough time for rest and recovery, can lower libido over time. It's a paradox. The more you engage, the less you might want to. This is because your brain's pleasure centers adapt to frequent stimulation, meaning you need more to feel the same excitement. It's like how eating chocolate every day eventually makes it less special. In addition, there's the matter of sleep quality. While occasional closeness before bed can help you relax and drift off, too much nighttime intimacy, especially if it cuts into your sleeping hours, can disrupt your circadian rhythm. Poor sleep is linked to a host of health problems, from weakened immunity and weight gain to mood disorders and reduced cognitive function. The irony here is that what might feel like bonding time could actually be robbing you of the deep rest your body desperately needs. Then there's the immune system factor. Physical intimacy exposes you to your partner's bacteria and viruses. In moderation, this can actually boost your immune system by helping it adapt to new microbes. But in excess, especially if one partner is feeling under the weather or going through stress, it can increase the risk of catching colds, flu, or other infections. When we put all these factors together, it becomes clear that while intimacy is essential for a healthy relationship, too much of it, without balance, can have unintended consequences. It's not about avoiding closeness. It's about understanding your body's and mind's limits and respecting the need for both connection and space. Beyond the physical and emotional strain, there's another layer to consider: psychological well-being. Human beings are wired for both connection and solitude, and each serves an important purpose. Connection fulfills our need for belonging, security, and love, while solitude allows us to process experiences, nurture personal ambitions, and maintain a strong sense of individuality. When intimacy becomes constant and uninterrupted, the brain loses valuable opportunities to reset, reflect, and maintain independence. Over time, this lack of mental space can lead to what psychologists call enmeshment, a condition where two people's identities become so fused together that it's difficult to distinguish where one ends and the other begins. At first, enmeshment can feel romantic and deeply bonding. You spend every moment together, finish each other's sentences, and feel as though your lives are perfectly intertwined. But over the long term, this closeness can come at a cost. When every decision is made jointly, personal goals may be neglected. A partner might pass up opportunities for career growth, hobbies, or self-care, simply to maintain that constant connection. And while the relationship may feel intense, the lack of independence can actually make it more fragile. Without the ability to stand alone, both partners can feel lost when faced with challenges that require individual resilience. Another consequence of too much intimacy is emotional burnout. Intimacy, especially physical intimacy, draws on a combination of emotional and physical energy. Think of it as a shared emotional bank account. Every act of closeness makes a withdrawal, and those withdrawals need to be replenished with rest, space, and other forms of self-nourishment. When couples push beyond their natural rhythm, they can experience fatigue, irritability, or even resentment, not because they don't love each other, but because the emotional account has been overdrawn. This often manifests in subtle ways. One partner might become quieter, less affectionate, or more easily annoyed, while the other feels confused about the sudden change in tone. This burnout can also make partners more vulnerable to conflict. The more time two people spend together, the greater the chance for misunderstandings. Something as small as a missed text reply or a change in tone can trigger feelings of insecurity. When emotional boundaries are blurred, these minor incidents can feel magnified. Instead of resolving small disagreements quickly, partners may spiral into overthinking or overreacting, which can damage trust over time. Another often overlooked factor is performance pressure. In relationships where intimacy is expected frequently, one or both partners might feel obligated to maintain a certain level of passion, even when they're stressed, physically unwell, or simply not in the mood. This pressure can lead to anxiety and self-consciousness, reducing enjoyment and creating a cycle where intimacy becomes something to perform rather than something to naturally enjoy. Over time, this can erode not only sexual satisfaction, but also emotional closeness, as intimacy begins to feel like a chore instead of a choice. From a biological perspective, overindulgence also affects the brain's neurochemical balance. Dopamine, the pleasure neurotransmitter, works best when there's space between high-reward activities. This space allows the brain to anticipate and savor upcoming experiences. When intimacy is constant, dopamine receptors can become less sensitive, meaning it takes more stimulation to achieve the same level of pleasure. This is why, paradoxically, couples who engage in intimacy too often can experience a drop in desire over time. The pleasure centers become overexposed, leading to diminished excitement. Too much intimacy can also subtly shift relationship dynamics. For example, one partner may start feeling smothered and crave alone time, while the other interprets this as rejection. This misinterpretation can trigger cycles of insecurity and reassurance seeking, where one partner withdraws and the other becomes more clingy. These dynamics can lead to emotional tension that has little to do with the actual strength of the relationship, but rather with the sheer quantity of time spent in close contact without enough space to breathe. This doesn't mean couples should avoid closeness. Far from it. The key is balance. Healthy intimacy is about rhythm. Moments of deep connection followed by moments of independence. The most fulfilling relationships allow both partners to come together and pull apart naturally, like the tide. This ebb and flow keeps passion alive, maintains individual identities, and ensures that intimacy remains a source of joy rather than a source of stress. By understanding these potential downsides of overindulgence, couples can make intentional choices about their time together. Scheduling quality moments rather than constant moments, supporting each other's individual pursuits, and respecting personal boundaries can strengthen not only the physical connection, but also the emotional bond. In this way, intimacy remains fresh, exciting, and deeply nourishing for the long haul. When we talk about intimacy, most people focus on its benefits: stronger relationships, emotional security, and physical satisfaction. But one of the most overlooked truths is that even in the healthiest relationships, there is such a thing as too much of a good thing. And one area where this becomes especially clear is in mental health and long-term relationship stability. One important point to understand is that constant intimacy can change how the brain processes reward and attachment. When two people spend nearly all of their free time together, their brains adjust to that constant presence. This can lead to dependence on proximity, meaning your emotional state starts to hinge almost entirely on whether your partner is physically or emotionally close at that moment. This dependency can make separations, even brief ones, feel more stressful than they should. A simple business trip, a night out with friends, or even a late work meeting can trigger anxiety, overthinking, or feelings of abandonment. This kind of dependency can also increase the likelihood of codependency, where one partner's self-worth is tied to the other's approval, affection, or attention. In such cases, intimacy stops being a mutual joy and becomes a form of emotional reassurance, which can be exhausting for both people involved. While closeness should feel like a choice, in codependent dynamics, it begins to feel like a necessity for emotional survival. Too much intimacy can also unintentionally limit personal growth. Healthy relationships allow both partners to explore their own interests, friendships, and ambitions outside of the partnership. But if closeness becomes excessive, these outside pursuits can take a back seat. You might find yourself skipping social events, neglecting hobbies, or passing on opportunities for personal advancement just to maintain that constant togetherness. Over time, this can lead to feelings of regret, loss of independence, and even resentment toward the relationship itself. From a physiological perspective, overindulgence in physical intimacy can affect hormone regulation in ways many people don't realize. For example, during sexual intimacy, men experience a spike in testosterone, while women see an increase in estrogen and oxytocin. These are beneficial in moderation, but when these hormone surges are triggered too frequently without enough recovery time, the body's endocrine system can become imbalanced. Men might experience fatigue, decreased motivation, or irritability, while women might notice mood swings, irregular cycles, or changes in libido. The body thrives on variety and rhythm. When those cycles are disrupted, overall vitality can decline. Sleep quality also remains a critical factor here. Constant late-night intimacy sessions, even when pleasurable, can interrupt the body's deep sleep cycles. Lack of restorative sleep doesn't just cause tiredness. It weakens the immune system, slows metabolism, and increases the risk of chronic conditions like heart disease and depression. What feels like a bonding habit in the moment may, over time, chip away at long-term health. Then there's the social health aspect, which is rarely discussed but deeply important. Too much intimacy can lead couples to become socially isolated, unintentionally withdrawing from family, friends, and community activities. Social isolation can shrink your support network, making it harder to cope with stress or life challenges. It also places more pressure on your partner to fulfill every emotional need, which is unrealistic and can strain the relationship. In extreme cases, excessive intimacy can cause what relationship experts refer to as passion fatigue. This happens when the novelty and excitement of closeness wears off because it's been overused. Think of it like hearing your favorite song on repeat. Eventually, you stop feeling the thrill you once did. This fatigue can be mistaken for a loss of love or attraction, when in reality, it's just the brain's way of adapting to constant stimulation. The solution to these challenges is not to avoid intimacy, but to strategically protect it. Relationships flourish when intimacy is balanced with personal space, variety, and mutual respect for boundaries. Instead of thinking of closeness as something that must be constant, it's healthier to view it as a cherished moment, one that's even sweeter when it's not taken for granted. By allowing space between moments of closeness, you give both your mind and body time to recharge, reset, and genuinely look forward to connecting again. In essence, the healthiest form of intimacy is one that's intentional, balanced, and mutually energizing, not something that drains your vitality, blurs your identity, or replaces your individual life. When you protect that balance, intimacy remains not only a source of pleasure, but a source of long-term strength for both you and your partner. When discussing the potential downsides of excessive intimacy, it's important to explore an area that many couples overlook: the impact on communication and problem-solving skills. While closeness can foster better understanding, constant closeness can actually weaken a couple's ability to handle conflict in a healthy way. Here's why. When two people spend an overwhelming amount of time together, they often avoid addressing small disagreements out of fear of disrupting the harmony. This might seem like a good strategy at first, but over time, unspoken frustrations can pile up. Without healthy pauses or moments apart to process feelings, these bottled up emotions can resurface as sudden outbursts or passive-aggressive behavior. In this way, too much intimacy can unintentionally stifle open, constructive communication. Another subtle but significant effect is the loss of mystery and anticipation. In the early stages of a relationship, Attraction often thrives on curiosity and novelty, wondering what your partner is doing, discovering new facets of their personality, or missing them when they're not around. But when intimacy becomes constant, the opportunity for curiosity decreases. You know where they are, what they're doing, and what to expect almost all the time. While familiarity builds security, too much of it can dull excitement and reduce the sense of discovery that keeps relationships feeling fresh. From a biological standpoint, anticipation is powerful because it triggers dopamine release even before the actual experience happens. When you look forward to seeing your partner, your brain builds excitement. If you're together constantly, that anticipatory reward system doesn't get activated as often, which can lower overall passion over time. Excessive intimacy can also lead to overexposure during stressful periods. Everyone has moments when they're not at their best. Days filled with frustration, exhaustion, or bad moods. In a balanced relationship, some of these moments are experienced privately, giving each person space to decompress before reconnecting. But when intimacy is constant, partners witness each other's rough moments in real time without the buffer of personal space. This can lead to quicker irritations, less patience, and even a sense of emotional heaviness in the relationship. In addition, personal identity can take a hit when togetherness overshadows individuality. Healthy intimacy allows for me time and we time to coexist. But if we time takes over entirely, hobbies, interests, and friendships outside the relationship may fade. This can result in a partner feeling lost or unsure of who they are outside the context of the relationship. And ironically, losing individuality can make a person less attractive over time, not because they're less lovable, but because confidence, independence, and self-growth are key components of long-term attraction. It's also worth noting that sexual satisfaction doesn't always increase with frequency. Research shows that couples who pace their intimacy and allow space between encounters often report higher satisfaction and deeper connection. This is because physical intimacy, like any pleasurable activity, benefits from variety, anticipation, and the feeling that it's a choice rather than an obligation. From a health perspective, overindulgence can trigger physical strain in the form of muscle soreness, fatigue, and even a weakened immune response if the body doesn't get adequate rest. Intimacy is, after all, a form of physical exertion. It burns energy, engages muscles, and activates multiple bodily systems. Without enough downtime, the body can struggle to maintain optimal performance in both intimacy and everyday life. Ultimately, the key takeaway is that intimacy works best when it's nurtured, not overused. Constant closeness may feel like a sign of love, but it can sometimes weaken the very bond it's meant to strengthen. By creating space for personal growth, maintaining a sense of mystery, and respecting each other's rhythms, couples can keep their connection strong, passionate, and healthy for years to come. One of the most underestimated consequences of too much intimacy is its potential to create emotional imbalance within the relationship. In a healthy partnership, both people contribute equally to emotional support, affection, and understanding. However, when intimacy becomes excessive, it can tip the scales, causing one partner to give more than they receive, or one to rely heavily on the other for constant reassurance. This imbalance can be exhausting, and over time, it can weaken the emotional foundation of the relationship. Excessive intimacy can also lead to what relationship psychologists refer to as attachment overdrive. This is when the natural attachment bond between two people becomes so intense that even short separations trigger distress. For example, being apart for a few hours may lead to feelings of anxiety or restlessness, not because there's an actual problem, but because the mind has grown accustomed to constant connection. While attachment is healthy in moderation, over-reliance can make the relationship feel more like a survival need than a mutual choice. On a physical level, intimacy, especially when very frequent, can put stress on the body in subtle ways. For instance, the hormonal surges that accompany closeness are beneficial in short bursts but can lead to hormonal fatigue if overactivated. Just like the adrenal glands can become overworked from constant stress, the systems that produce oxytocin, dopamine, and other love hormones also need time to reset. Without that reset, you might experience mood swings, reduced energy, and even a decreased desire for intimacy over time. Sleep disruption is another overlooked factor. Intimate moments late at night may feel romantic, but when they consistently cut into sleeping hours, they interfere with the body's natural circadian rhythm. Sleep deprivation affects everything, from mental clarity and memory to immune function and emotional regulation. Over time, this can make both partners more irritable, less patient, and less able to enjoy intimacy in the first place. Excessive closeness can also unintentionally limit personal resilience. Life inevitably throws challenges our way, and the ability to cope with stress independently is essential for long-term stability. But when intimacy becomes constant, it's easy to lean so heavily on your partner for comfort that you stop building your own coping skills. This means that when you're forced to face difficulties alone, whether it's a work problem, a family issue, or a personal setback, you may feel more overwhelmed than you should. Another surprising consequence is the risk of social disconnection. When a couple becomes their own exclusive world, friendships and family connections may start to fade. This not only shrinks your support system, but also increases pressure on the relationship to meet every emotional need. Without outside interactions, you lose the variety and perspective that other relationships bring, both of which can make your romantic relationship stronger. Lastly, there's the paradox of passion. While many believe that more intimacy automatically means more passion, the opposite can happen. Passion thrives on novelty, mystery, and the slight unpredictability that comes from having separate experiences and interests. If you remove those elements, attraction can become routine. This doesn't mean the love fades, it just means the excitement level changes, which can be frustrating if you don't understand why. The healthiest approach is to recognize that space and togetherness are both essential ingredients in a lasting relationship. Intimacy is most powerful when it's balanced, when each partner has time to recharge, grow individually, and return to the relationship with new energy. By intentionally protecting both personal space and shared connection, couples can prevent burnout and keep their relationship vibrant for the long haul. As we move deeper into understanding the effects of too much intimacy, it becomes clear that balance is not just a preference, it's a necessity for emotional, physical, and relational health. One of the most profound effects of constant closeness is its ability to reshape personal priorities, sometimes in ways that are not beneficial in the long run. When two people spend nearly all their time together, other areas of life can slowly shift to the background. Career ambitions may lose urgency, hobbies can fade, and personal development may stall. This isn't always intentional. It often happens gradually as the relationship becomes the central focus. But over time, this can lead to a sense of stagnation, where both individuals feel they're not progressing in life outside of their bond. While love is a beautiful motivator, a healthy partnership encourages personal growth, not the abandonment of it. Another important consideration is emotional pacing. Relationships have natural rhythms, moments of deep closeness followed by lighter, more independent periods. When this rhythm is replaced by constant intensity, emotions can burn too brightly and too fast, leaving little fuel for the long term. This is similar to sprinting at the start of a marathon. Excitement drives the first burst, but without pacing, exhaustion sets in early. From a physical perspective, the body needs recovery cycles after intimacy. Intimate encounters engage the cardiovascular system, muscles, hormonal pathways, and the nervous system. While these activations are healthy in moderation, overuse can lead to fatigue, soreness, and even lowered immune resistance. Over time, if the body isn't allowed to rest, these physical stressors can accumulate, making both partners more vulnerable to illness and burnout. Psychologically, too much intimacy can create emotional saturation. This happens when you've shared so many moments, both big and small, that there's little left to surprise or excite you. While familiarity is comforting, relationships also thrive on novelty and new experiences. Without them, the bond can begin to feel predictable, which can dull emotional engagement and lower passion. Social health plays a major role here as well. Couples who are constantly together can unintentionally create an echo chamber where their views, opinions, and emotional states are reinforced without outside perspective. This can limit personal growth, reduce empathy for different viewpoints, and even increase conflict when the couple does eventually interact with others whose opinions differ. Diverse interactions, whether with friends, family, or colleagues, help keep both individuals grounded and emotionally balanced. Financial health can also be affected. Constant togetherness often leads to more shared activities, which may mean more spending on dates, trips, or joint purchases. While shared experiences are valuable, neglecting personal financial goals in the name of constant togetherness can create stress later on, especially if unexpected expenses arise. Finally, there's the matter of self-identity and attraction. People are often most attractive when they are confident, fulfilled, and living in alignment with their personal values. If constant intimacy leads you to neglect the things that make you feel like yourself, whether that's a creative passion, fitness goals, or personal achievements, it can subtly impact how you see yourself and how your partner sees you. Attraction is not just about physical closeness. It's about admiration, respect, and the energy each person brings into the relationship. In the end, too much intimacy isn't about the acts themselves. It's about the absence of balance. The healthiest relationships are those where closeness and independence coexist in harmony, where both partners can stand strong individually and choose to come together, not because they have to, but because they genuinely want to. This is the kind of intimacy that fuels love for decades, keeping it fresh, not exciting, and deeply rewarding. At this stage, it's important to recognize that the goal isn't to avoid intimacy. It's to create a sustainable rhythm that keeps both partners emotionally fulfilled, physically healthy, and mentally balanced. Too much intimacy becomes a problem not because love itself is harmful, but because constant, unmoderated closeness removes some of the natural ingredients that make a relationship thrive: space, anticipation, and individuality. One long-term consequence of excessive closeness is what relationship experts sometimes call romantic fatigue. This happens when the emotional and physical aspects of the relationship become so predictable that excitement fades. Romantic fatigue doesn't mean the love is gone. It means the balance between closeness and independence is off. Think of it like eating your favorite meal every single day. Eventually, the very thing you once craved starts to feel ordinary. Another important consideration is the effect on conflict resolution skills. In healthy relationships, small disagreements are normal and even beneficial. They allow partners to express differences, negotiate solutions, and grow together. But when intimacy is constant, couples may start to avoid conflict altogether to preserve the closeness. While this seems peaceful on the surface, it can actually allow resentment to quietly build. And when that resentment finally surfaces, it often does so in a much more intense and damaging way than if the issues had been addressed earlier. From a psychological standpoint, constant intimacy can also make self-soothing skills weaker. Self-soothing is the ability to calm yourself during stress or emotional discomfort without relying on someone else. In relationships where partners are always together, the default response to stress often becomes lean on my partner rather than calm myself first. While emotional support is vital, over-reliance can reduce personal resilience, making it harder to cope when your partner isn't immediately available. There's also the impact on sexual desire cycles. Healthy intimacy allows desire to build naturally, but when physical closeness is overly frequent, desire can plateau or even decline. This is due to the body's neurochemical adaptation. Dopamine, oxytocin, and other pleasure-related chemicals are most potent when triggered intermittently. Without breaks, the brain begins to normalize these sensations, making them feel less intense over time. Socially, too much intimacy can shrink your network of relationships, leaving you with fewer sources of joy, advice, and emotional input. Friendships and family connections add layers of richness to life and help maintain perspective during relationship challenges. When your partner becomes your sole source of companionship, the relationship is under much greater pressure to meet every social and emotional need, a nearly impossible task for one person. Physically, excessive intimacy without adequate rest can lead to chronic fatigue. Intimacy engages the cardiovascular system, releases endorphins, and activates multiple hormonal pathways, all of which require recovery time. Without that rest, your energy levels drop, your immune system weakens, and your mood can suffer. The key takeaway here is that healthy intimacy is a balance of connection and autonomy. It's about intentionally creating space to miss each other, to grow separately, and to return to each other with new stories, perspectives, and energy. This rhythm prevents burnout, keeps attraction alive, and ensures that intimacy remains a source of joy rather than a source of strain. When closeness is balanced with personal independence, it becomes something you actively choose each day, not something that feels automatic or obligatory. And that's the true foundation of a passionate, enduring, and deeply satisfying relationship. In the end, intimacy is like sunlight, essential for growth, but too much without shade can cause things to wither. The secret lies in finding the balance where love can truly flourish.